Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I hope you'll excuse me using my little cue cards, but I have some important facts and some numbers, and in my senior years, they don't necessarily stick for quite as long as they used to do in my early stages. I have traveled the world studying and investigating the strange and the unusual, things that go bump in the night. Have you bumped in the night lately? Not recently. My world of Unexplained Mysteries is a syndicated radio and television broadcast, and in the course of doing those broadcasts, of course, I get to meet a lot of interesting, strange, and unusual people. Some interesting and strange experiences. I've lived and worked in 25 countries around the world now. My lovely wife Rose is wife number 7, and one of my most interesting books is A Senior's Guide to the Dating Game, which you're going to have a lot of fun reading, but I recommend that. And you can find that on all of my 27 websites. Let me give you a quick idea of the sort of things that I've been involved in over the years. I need to borrow a 25-cent piece. I think we only have one lady with a quarter. Okay. Now there's only one problem that I failed to mention, and that's this. It's not really the quarter I wanted at all, it's you. Would you mind helping me? Please. Give her a big round of applause. In your hand. It's essential that nobody touches it but you. I'm going to place it in your hand, close your hand, keep your hand closed on it. I'm simply going to touch my pulse, or your pulse with my thumb, and as I do so, you may feel a change in your hand. It may get warmer or colder, heavier or lighter, but more than likely you'll feel a tingle across the tips of your fingers. Tell me please the moment you feel the change. No change? You don't get a lot of change from 25 cents in Las Vegas. I'll get you to gradually open your hand and tell me if you feel anything. Oh, that's interesting. Look, it's actually bent. I think she deserves a round of applause. If you put that down on the table, I promise you that it'll continue to bend throughout the presentation. Would you do that for me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Rebecca, you don't mind if I call you Rebecca?
No, that's fine.
Tomorrow? No, it's hard. I just had a terrible thought, Rebecca. Everything you get hold of doesn't bend like that, does it?
No.
Somebody somewhere will be very relieved. Actually, it was rather amusing because Rebecca was showing us some pictures earlier, and I had a chance to chat with her earlier about her newfound love of life who lives in Great Britain, and she was showing me photographs of her trip over there, of course, to meet with him in his home. One of the photographs, she looked like she'd been hit by a truck, and I said, what happened? She said, well, when I first met Stephen, isn't it? Is it Stuart? I beg your pardon, Stuart. When I first met Stuart, he told me he'd been saving up all his life for the right woman. I thought he meant money, but she survived the ordeal. She's looking very well. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the various amazing people that have come into my life over the last few years. I'm currently working with Dr. Lonnie Hamilton, who many of you may know, your ex-Lieutenant Governor, and I have the privilege, of course, of writing his biography currently. Quite an amazing man. People who have influenced me within my lifetime are people like Carl Sagan, who back in my early days of broadcasting, he and I became very good friends. He was involved in that time in the SETI program, the search for extraterrestrial life, of course, in our solar system. And quite remarkably, oops, I'm sorry, it's on the move. Quite remarkably, SETI has played a very big part in my life over the years. I was one of the founding members, along with Carl, of that organization. And they, of course, searched the skies for the possibility of radio signals from outer space from their Allen array in Northern California. Previously, we used the telescope, the Arecibo telescope. But Carl, like myself and a lot of people, a lot of colleagues, believe very firmly that our first contact with aliens will not be via a spaceship flying into a cornfield in Iowa, plucking some hairs out of some farmer's head and having sex with a farmer's daughter and flying back to some unknown planet somewhere. He believed, and indeed most of us in the scientific community today believe, that it will be via either radio waves or laser waves that we make our initial contact with our galactic neighbors. And indeed, we're all very much of the same opinion that they definitely do exist out there. The point that I want to make is that it's a two-way street. If we're looking for them, it's more than likely that they are going to be also looking for us. But I'd like to take a little bit of my time in the short period that I have available to me today to explain some of the difficulties that would be involved, which make my previous assumption that a midnight quick visit is out of the question. We, of course, reside in the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy has over 2 billion stars to our nearest possible means of calculation. It's over 100,000 light years across. I don't know how conversant you are with a light year, but a light year is approximately 6 quadrillion miles long in our conventional miles. That's 6 followed by 12 zeros. Our nearest possible inhabited planet would be Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri is a mere 4.5 light years away. And about 2 years ago, the scientific community discovered that planet B of that 3-star configuration has all the ingredients necessary to support life as we know it here on Earth. I wonder if any of you know the fastest speed that we've ever obtained in outer space. Anybody know? Yes, sir?
About 175,000 miles an hour.
Well, let me tell you, the Apollo space mission, Apollo 10, was tracked at 25,000 miles an hour on its re-entry. The fastest sustained speed that we've reached, and I want to get these figures correct for you, is 1,864 miles per hour. So that would be the very fastest that we could travel if we left Earth today in search of a galactic neighbor. 1,864. The speed of light is another matter. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. Now, if that's difficult to comprehend, try LA to London in 1/20th of a second, just to give you some idea of the comparable speed. If we traveled at that best known speed of 1,864 miles per hour, the fastest speed that we can do, that we can reach as we speak with our existing technology, it would take us a mere, give or take a year or two, 3 million years to reach our nearest possible inhabited planet. 3 million years. Enter Eric von Daniken. Eric and I became good friends back in the early 80s in Australia. Eric, of course, who was the author of the book Chariot of the Gods, which I'm sure most of you have read probably, or certainly heard about. It's been published in more languages, or at least it's certainly the number 2 to the Bible in terms of languages in which it's been published and the number of copies sold. So an incredible readership to von Daniken's theories that we were in fact visited by aliens. And in fact, my lecture for the Smithsonian Institute, which I had hoped to present a bit of for you today, but requires a PowerPoint, is based on the possibility of alien intervention on archaeological sites. Do I believe they visited us? Do I believe there was an intervention? Yes. quite frankly, as an archaeologist, I do. And I've seen the evidence for it. Things like the statues on Easter Island, which are totally inexplicable for most of us. Rose and I were in Egypt just a couple of years ago, and we had the opportunity to visit and climb the pyramid at Cheops. We have a photograph, if you go to my worldofunexplainedmysteries.com website, showing Rose and I stood on a block halfway up the pyramid at Cheops. Those blocks are 2.5 tons each. Now, to the best of our knowledge, the population workforce in Egypt at the time of the Middle Kingdom, when the pyramids were created, was around about 200,000. Now, assuming that they were capable of raising one of those 2.5-ton blocks to the top of that pyramid, and they could perhaps move 10 blocks per day, it would have taken 664 years to build the Pyramid of Cheops alone. That's 30 generations. We really have no explanation today. You'll see illustrations and pictures of them rolling these blocks along on wooden rollers. Have any of you visited Egypt and the Egyptian desert? Well, you get a very similar idea from our Californian deserts. The only wood there is the palm tree. And if you're familiar with a palm tree, it is so soft that if you put a 2.5-ton block on it, it would go flat to the floor. So how were these blocks moved? The blocks at Stonehenge in England, these incredible, mammoth, great, colossal stones that were carted for 400 or 500 miles overland and finally put in place, like the figures on Easter Island. We have no genuine explanation. In Central America, the winged victor of Palenque, a carving which actually shows a Mayan at the controls of a spaceship. I mean, undeniably. We found a 5,000-year-old item in Japan that's wearing goggles and a helmet, indistinguishable from a current space helmet that would be required today. So there's a lot of evidence out there to support the possibility that alien intervention took place. But having said that, enter Einstein and his time dilation theory. The time dilation theory says that if we could travel very close to the speed of light, remember that London to LA in a 20th of a second, if we could get anywhere close to that, we could probably do that journey out to Alpha Centauri and back in around about 60-odd years. The body traveling at that speed deteriorates at a much slower rate than normally would do here on Earth. But as a consequence, even though we will have aged 65 years on our journey to Alpha Centauri and back, life on Earth will not exactly be as it was when you left. Don't go looking for your next door neighbors. 200 plus years will have gone by here on Earth while you were on your 65-year journey. So it really is a world of unexplained mystery, and time travel and space is really what it's all about. I have a lot of fun with time in my presentations around the world. Let me give you just a brief look. I need to borrow a watch. Mark, I got the time from you earlier. Is your watch working all right, sir?
You're not going to abandon it, are you?
No. Okay, Mark.
It is now.
As an attorney, I know that you would not mislead me in any way, shape, or form. How did you ascertain that your watch was working, Mark? Oh, a thing that goes round? I don't want to, far be it from me, Your Honor, to suggest that my opposition attorney here would mislead the court, but is that watch working, in your opinion?
No, it's not running.
It's not? You're quite sure?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but excuse me. But is that watch working, sir, in your humble opinion?
No, it stopped.
It has. Mark, I've got good news in that. Your watch, sir, according to my learned friend here, seems to have stopped. Would that be correct? The dial has not been touched. Nothing's been tapped.
Yeah, it's not going.
Would you open your hand, please, sir? Just open it.
You're not gonna bend it, are you?
I'm going to place your watch there. I want you to just close your hand on your watch, if you will. Just keep it like that for a second. Interestingly enough, if you look at your watch now, sir, you'll find that it's ticking merrily.
Yeah, that's-
And if you reset your watch to 10, 21, or 22, I think you'll find that it will work better than it's ever worked before. Would you give Mark a big round of applause for me? I'd like to leave you, if I may, with a few words that I wrote. Some years ago, I was approached by my producer of my World of Unexplained Mysteries television series that at that time we were producing. It was called Beyond Belief, and we were recording it in a little studio in Queensland on a network called SEQ Television in Australia. And I wrote these words. I call it simply the set of the sail. I saw a man the other day stood lonely by the road. His clothes were torn, his shoes were worn. The highway was his home. He wore no smile upon his face, so weather-worn with time, and I couldn't help but wonder what he'd been like in his prime. Was he at school a bright young man, adept at sums of knowledge? And what of love? Had it passed him by in his early years at college? And why, when those around him had gone on to greater things, had he taken to the open road and the loneliness that brings? I pondered as I drove my car along the open road. What steers a man through the sea of life? What determines his route and the weight of his load? What leads men on to impossible dreams, while others fall by the way? Is there some magical, mystical force that guides us day by day? I parked my car beside the lake and I watched the boats go sailing by. And it was there I found the answer, and perhaps the reason why. From left to right and right to left, the tiny boats flew past with sheets of colorful canvas billowing from their masts. Was it not, I asked, the same wind that filled each and every sail? Yet some chose left and others right, despite the strength of the gale. Just as some of us choose greater goals, and others choose to fail. You see, each of us must set our goals. Through our life, the same wind blows. You see, it's not the gale, it's the set of the sail that determines the way we go. I'm Peter J. Shield. Thanks for listening.